Welcome back. In this lesson, we're going to add some arms, a little carrot nose, and a top hat. So let's go back to our front view and let's go back to object mode because we're going to add some new objects to this. And what we want to do is just take our 3D cursor and put it somewhere up here near the arm. I'm going to go to the side view. So just hit 3 on your numpad and do a shift right click somewhere, around the shoulder area. Let's do shift right, and that will put the 3D cursor because we want to add an object right there. So we're going to do shift A, add a mesh, and let's add a cube. And it's pretty huge, but let's tone it down a little bit, maybe to like 3. There we go, that's better. We want it to stick out of the body, so let's rotate it 45 degrees on the Y axis. So we'll do Y 45. There we go. And now it's, we're not breaking our 45-degree rule, and we've got a little cube. So let's go ahead and click on that and go into edit mode with tab. And I'm going to hit 3 to go into our face select and just grab that top face there and scale it down just a little bit. And we'll go, make sure you still have that face selected, and we'll hit 1 to go to the front view. And we're going to use our extrude to cursor effect that we learned in previous videos. So just click on that. And we're just going to do some zigzagging here. So maybe go 1 or 2 out, and then maybe zigzag up, and then zigzag out, and then maybe 1 more, and then zigzag over here, and maybe 1 up. There we go. And we'll just go back to select. That way we can get out of here. And there's our funny looking tree stick arm kind of sticking out there. Maybe let's add maybe like a branch coming out of here. So, I could click this and extrude, but it's just a little too big. So I'm just going to hit escape. And I've got a extrude plane right on top of another one. So I'm just going to escape and undo that. And make sure, we want it to be, we don't want 2 planes on top of itself. So what we can do is just loop cut that, Control R, and let's just loop cut, somewhere in there. And now we can take the face and grab this one and maybe just extrude out a little bit, maybe scale down, and then maybe extrude up a little bit more, and maybe scale that down too, just so he has like a little stick hand. Maybe grab this face, scale that down a little bit. There we go. That looks more stick-like. And now we're going to go back into object mode and add the multi-res onto this too, this little cube here, so we can sculpt on it. So let's go to our modifiers and go to the second column right there in the middle, multi-resolution. And again, nothing happens until we subdivide. So let's just click it a few times, maybe subdivide it like 4 or 5 times, maybe 4. And sometimes what I like to do is turn on the wireframes just to see, how many times do we need to click this to kind of get these 2 square sizes to match. So notice these are really tiny squares and these are a little bigger. So maybe let's subdivide one more time. There we go. So that looks a little closer. And then now let's add another modifier with the mirror. And you can see that it's kind of made, it's mirrored it right here down the line, but we want to mirror across the snowman. So just do your mirror object snowman, and that will bring that little other arm right there. And we can turn our wireframes off just so we can see our little guy here. He's so funny looking. I love it. What's pretty cool is you can always tab into edit mode and, change these, the stick layout. If you wanted to move things around and kind of, do a different style of sticks, you could do that. So, feel free to adjust your sticks however you want. Or if you want to, extrude some other planes to make some different, points sticking out, feel free to do that. But I'm just going to keep it simple here. So that's looking pretty funny. Let's go ahead and take our cube and rename that arms. Now let's add a carrot nose. So I'm just going to go to front view and do shift right click. Make sure you're in object mode and do shift right click right there on the nose, center as I can. I may even go into view and look for the 3D cursor and center up my X. It's almost at 0. It's 0.01, but let's take it right there in the center. And notice it's right on top of the nose there. And we're going to do Shift A to add another cube. And we can leave that at 3, maybe even take it down to 2. There we go. And we can do a 45-degree spin on the X-axis here. So just do rotation X and do 45. There we go. Yeah. And we've got a nice little nose with our 45-degree. That way we don't need any supports. And I'm going to go to the side view with 3. Go into edit mode. And maybe just grab it, push it back just a little bit, just so that, the nose or the carrot's not popping out of the mouth there. And let's grab this top face, go to the side view, and maybe scale it down just a little bit. Hit E to extrude, scale it down a little bit, and E to extrude again, and scale it down a little bit more. And I may loop cut that just to have a few more, dividing lines. So just hit Control R, and we can loop cut somewhere in here, maybe do one in here, and maybe one more somewhere in there. So there we go. Now we've got this carrot nose, and we're going to do the same thing as before. Just go back to object mode, and we're going to add the multi-resolution, and then we'll subdivide maybe 3, 4, 5 times. Let's just do 5, and turn our wireframes on. Let's see what our squares. So we don't, maybe one less than that. So let's crank these 2 down, and then click delete higher. And that way 4 is looking pretty close to that same kind of mesh square size. I'm going to turn the wireframes off. And we've got a funny looking carrot nose that will not need any supports. And let's just rename this cube. We can call it nose. There we go. And now let's add a hat on top. So let's just hit 7 to go to the top. And we'll do Shift right click. And I'm going to make sure my 3D cursor is right in the center. So I'm on the View tab. And on 3D cursor location, we're going to zero out the X right there, just to make sure it's perfectly centered. And that's going to help when we go to sculpt, when it's doing the mirror, sculpting, it'll be right down the middle. And now we're going to add another cube. So do Shift A and add a cube. And let's make this one a little larger. Let's do 10 millimeters. That looks good. And then just tab into edit mode, and we're going to hit S and Z and just scale it on the Z axis and make kind of like a brim of a hat, something like that. There we go. Kind of like a book is just sitting on top of his head. And then if we go to the top, grab the face here on top and just hit I to inset. There we go. And then we can hit E to extrude. That's going to make a little top hat. So let's go back to object mode, add the modifier multi-resolution just like before. And let's subdivide it a few times, maybe 5 times, 4 or 5 times. Let's check our wireframes here. Yeah, maybe one more. There we go. Yeah, that looks pretty close. So we can turn our wireframes back off. And it's not really, it looks more like a bell. So let's go back into edit mode and add some more geometry here. So maybe do a loop cut on the hat here, and then slide it down kind of near the bottom here, right there. And then do a loop cut maybe in the middle, somewhere in there. And we can kind of scale that in. And let's see what that looks like. Just tab back. That's looking more like a top hat. It's looking better. So let's go back, maybe grab the face here and scale it up a little bit and see how that looks. That looks better. We'll go back, maybe extrude just a little bit more. There we go. So that little, kind of like these close together extrusions really kind of tightens up the hat there. And I like this here. If we look from the front view, it may be just a little too flat. We may have to have support material. So let's try and get around that. Go into tab, maybe grab the bottom face here and hit G and Z. Just kind of bring that down a little bit. See if we can get some more curvature. That's better. Not great, but we may be able. Okay, we may be able to get away with that. I might bring this down a little bit more. Just give us a nice curve. Yeah, that may be a little easier for our printer to print. And then let's maybe go into Edge Select and double click on those. This kind of loop select, or you can Alt click on this and it'll select the whole wraparound there. And we'll do G and Z. Just kind of bring that down. And maybe bring these down too. So Alt click or double click and hit G and Z. That looks pretty cool. And let's do one more loop cut right here. And this will be kind of like a ribbon that's around the hat. So we'll go to Face Select and then double click on the edge or Alt click on the edge and get this whole little banner here. And we're going to hit E to extrude, but notice that it wants to go up and down. So just hit Escape, and the planes, it has been extruded, but it's just sitting right on top of itself. So now if we hit S, it will just scale it out, kind of like a little banner. So let's see what that looks like. Oh, we're getting somewhere. Maybe just scale it out just a little bit more. There we go. So now we've got like a little ribbon on the hat. That looks pretty cool. And there we go. We've got a nice little top hat for this guy. And that's pretty funny, pretty great. So now we've got kind of like the basic accessories. And all we did was, all these were made with just cubes and some extrude tricks and adding a multi-res. So let's go into the next lesson where we're going to add some really nice details to all these accessories.